Hello, hello. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special interaction on the LAMP Fellowship that we have here today. Uh, Today we'll discuss, everything about the fellowship, from the eligibility criteria to how do you apply, right, to the experience of being a fellow itself, right, to career opportunities after the fellowship, right, and then maybe we end just with some tips and tricks, right, for anyone who's looking to apply. We will start with a quick round of introductions. We have some very special guests today, right? Starting from someone who was a part of the very first batch of LAMP. Yes, right. And look forward to the conversation, right? If you have any feedback, any comments, please let us know in the comments below. Right? And if there are any other guests that we should get, let us know again. And maybe I'll just start with my introduction first, right? So I'm the moderator for today. My name is Yash. I legally still work with Twitter India and South Asian policy role, but I'm moving on and setting up a consulting firm of my own. I've been a LAMP myself, 2019-20 batch. And yeah, I also run Public Policy India. It's a knowledge platform dedicated to, making policy more engaging and accessible and helping people create meaningful careers here. So that's about me. Maybe we'll go to Aprajita next.
Hi, I'm Aprajita. I was in the first batch of LAMP, so I'm a dinosaur LAMP on this call. I was somebody who did undergrad in commerce and business studies and transitioned to public policy, and this was literally the only option available in 2010 to get into this space. And since then, I've done a lot of different things in public policy, but as of now, I run two organizations with my co-founder, the Quantum Hub and Young Leaders for Active Citizenship. The Quantum Hub TQH Consulting is a public policy firm, and WILACT is actually an organization that is into citizen engagement and policy education and works with high school students and college students and young professionals.
Shivam?
So I was a LAMP fellow in the 2015-16 batch, so I guess somewhere in the middle now, pretty much exactly in the middle, I guess.
Yeah.
I have been working in a lot of different spaces related to policy and politics. So I've worked in political consultancy for the largest time, have worked with IPAC, have worked with both sides of the aisle on different state elections, one national election, set up my own company that does data analytics for political parties. Since then, I've also written two books, one on politics, one on information warfare. Just graduated with a master's from something called Schwarzman Scholars, which is a program that absolutely loves LAMP fellows and recruits from that very actively. Other than that, I'm working on a geopolitical media project that's launching next month. So more on that sometime soon.
Just a heads up for audiences, Aprajita and Shivam are extremely humble. They have done like 10x of whatever they've shared. Please do look them up on LinkedIn. Amrit.
Hi, I'm Amrit. I'm a LAMP fellow of the present cohort, 22-23. And I've graduated in sociology. I've worked in media for some time before switching to LAMP. And since I'm someone from the present cohort, I do not have a lot in terms of the other experiences, but I have been working on parliamentary interventions, bill briefings, questions, everything that my MP does in the parliament from time to time.
Thanks, Amrit. He's definitely one of the kindest people I know of, and I just really look forward to the conversation we have today. We'll quickly get started. First things first, right? Hygiene stuff, but eligibility criteria. Maybe Amrit can just take this up and quickly run us through that. First, anyone?
Sure. Yeah. So to apply for the LAMP fellowship, you need to be a graduate. You need to at least have a graduation degree. You do not need to have a minimum selection criteria. You need to be under 25 years of age, and you need to be an Indian citizen. So that are the minimum eligible criteria to apply for LAMP.
Amrita, I've actually gotten this question. So just asking, when do you have to graduate by? Is it okay if people are graduating this year?
Yeah, sure. So people in my batch, they have graduated in 2022. People in the 2022-23 cohort, they have graduated in 2022. But the baseline is that by the time the training starts, they should have their provisional degree in hand.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. So basically, I got into LAMP while I was still in college. Right. So, but my college exams, final exams ended in March or April, and LAMP begins in June. So it was not an issue. Right. There's that. And one more thing, Amrit, I'm not sure if you have an answer on this, but a lot of people ask about the 25 years of age thing, right? So by when do you have to be 25? I think I have a partial answer that you have to be 25 by the time the selection process is underway, 25 or below.
January 1 of the year that you are applying. So January 1 of 2023.
Yeah, you have to be 25 or below, right?
Yeah.
So great. That's a big common query we get. Now on the selection process, right? We know that there are two essays that you have to submit as a part of your application, right? Then there's an online evaluation test, something new this year, right? And then there's the interview process, right? Maybe Amrit, if you could just walk us through the two essays. In fact, I'll also add in.
Yeah, sure. So there are two essays that you write as a part of the LAMP application. One of them is the policy essay that you need to write on any policy issue or legislation of importance. And the second is your statement of purpose, elucidating why you should be a part of the LAMP fellowship, what the LAMP fellowship adds to your future, your career, stuff like that. So those the initial part of the application process. From this year onwards, there has been a new stage which is called the online evaluation test. For those who are shortlisted in the first round, they will get to undertake the evaluation test on the 8th of January. And even though the details are still being fleshed out, as far as I know, it is going to consist of details about the structure of parliament, the way it functions, the bills that have been taken up in the parliament recently or in the past 1 year, so as to judge its knowledge of the parliamentary processes and functions. So that is about the evaluation test. And finally, if you get shortlisted from there, you get to appear in the interview, and then the final selection list comes up.
And maybe if I can just build on what Amrit has shared already, the policy essay, more of a personal advice, but do stick to something which is relevant to whatever you're applying for and what you're trying to do, right? And more importantly, something that you care about and know about, right? So that'll show through in the essay. Similarly for the SOP, right? Build a strong case of why LAMP, why you, and probably a bit of what after LAMP, right? So what I tell people all the time is that, right, I think there's a 500 word limit, right? So maybe just write 1,000 words if you want, right? And then bring that down to 500 instead of starting from the restrictive idea of I can only write 500 words in that sense. On the test, yes, Amrit has added everything that we know already. Just I would say be well aware of the broader policy space and governance space in that sense, right? Whatever is happening in general, so that you're well prepared for that. And of course, the interviews, it's a panel of usually 3 people. One of them is definitely an ex-LAMP, right? Someone from PRS and sometimes an independent expert. But and I think you can take that online as well, and definitely you can take that in New Delhi in the PRS office. So there's the selection process. Thank you so much, Amrit.
Sorry, Yash, I just want to add something. When you are writing your essay, do not plagiarize. That is something that is very, very important. I've been a part of the review committee sometimes, and you can tell that it's been ripped off of magazines, or it's been ripped off of PRS websites sometimes, because they do analysis available on bills. So please, please, please do not plagiarize, and plagiarize just for people, because I think our education system does a bad job of telling people what's plagiarism, but do not more than 6 words from any place, that the plagiarism test actually catches to that. So to that extent, just your understanding of the topic that you're writing and write it in your own words.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, Prajita. In fact, I have heard people come to me and tell me that, oh, this paper that I took this from is very obscure. Nothing is obscure on the internet, right? The
Absolutely.
catch everything. Just write your own thing, right? Totally couldn't agree more. Okay, now we'll come to slightly more, let's just admin bit of it, which is what kind of roles and responsibilities are assigned to LAMP fellows, and this is open for anyone to answer.
Shivam, do you want to say?
Yeah, sure. So definitely a large part of it is related to parliamentary interventions that your member of parliament is going to do. That includes asking questions of ministries, where the ministry actually has to supply the data and answer the questions that the MP has raised. It goes to different kind of motions that the MP can raise, raising issues from their own constituencies, or raising issues of different national interests, or raising some issue that's current and is affecting parliamentary procedure. They also have the system where MPs actually can become a part of the different debates happening in Parliament. So it can be a debate on a particular topic that another MP has raised, or it could be a bill that's being discussed. In that case, you would be responsible for providing a summary of the bill to your MP, explaining different parts, maybe analyzing how it's going to affect people in their specific constituency, how it's going to affect different demographics, like, say, the youth or women or any specific demographic that your MP is interested in. Then what you have is private member bills, which is a bill that an MP can submit in Parliament. It's very difficult for an individual MP's bill to get passed and picked up as a private member bill and taken forward, but it has happened in the past. And other than that, it does create a discussion around the issue, and you can do a lot of media engagement around it. You can help your MP essentially work with civil society organizations and NGOs on that specific issue, understand more, research more. Uh, my MP, Mr. P.D. Rai from Sikkim, was an MP from a party that only has one seat. So,
Right.
yeah, and from a very tiny state. So
Yeah.
he realized he would not be the most effective in parliament.
Yeah.
Because what do you do as an individual MP? And the party also did not have a very clear stance because they did not interfere in national politics. They were always with the ruling party. In that kind of a circumstance, he decided, let's do a lot more outside parliament. And being from a mountain state, he was involved with something called the Sustainable Mountain Development Summit. So
Right.
in my lab here, we hosted a meeting of the chief ministers and the speakers of the houses of all the 11 mountain states in India to discuss how do you do sustainable development. Then we worked with an organization called the Population Foundation of India on what are the districts where the population is still rising at the fastest rate, because most of India is actually at or below the replacement rate of population now.
Yeah.
So it's very specific regions. So we worked on identifying those regions. Then we called the MPs from those regions to join a population, like a forum of MPs on population stabilization. So just interventions like this. Sikkim also had a drug problem. So we worked on an initiative called Sathi. And that was an educational initiative in Sikkim schools. So we worked with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, in Delhi, to actually develop a curriculum. So you can do a lot when you're here, mostly because you represent the office of a member of parliament,
Yeah.
and a lot of these different organizations are willing to talk to you, are willing to help you build interventions, which
Yeah.
is something that you should definitely be using.
Yep. Right. Maybe just one small thing that I'll add on that, and Shivandan and Aprajita, Amrit, please feel free to chime in. See, the idea is that, it's in the name itself, right? You're a legislative aid to an MP, right? So of course you'll be doing research, writing speeches, acting as a point of liaison, right? So maybe sometimes with ministries, with state government, someone in the person's constituency. Political work is a big no-go, right? So that's not something you're there for pure policy, not politics in that sense, right? Of course, but yeah, there are like many use cases that maybe we can't even fully enunciate right now, right? But that may come up that your MP might need support with, right? So maybe, for example, your MP's, she's drawing up a campaign against malnutrition, right? So you're preparing a concept note, right? The point being, the scope of work cannot ever be fully captured, but essentially you act as an aid to an elected representative, right? At the highest levels there too, and it's just very exciting and fun and challenging, right? One thing also is there that, and I see a lot of people asking this. Yes, PRS has a lot of review sessions and all on a frequent cadence, right? Just to make sure that you're on track and whatever work you're doing. So that's there, but that's like barely once a week or something, right? But you are assigned to an MP, and that's where your work will be, right? Anything I may have missed?
No, I just want to add two things actually. One is that, all MPs are a part of standing committees, and standing committees do a lot of great work on bills that come to them for analysis. And
Yeah.
that is where actually you can have the most impact sometimes. At least that was the case when I was a LAMP, and I've seen that in the last 10 years of doing public policy, that actually a lot of great discussion happens in the standing committees.
Yeah.
And they actually even give non-partisan research to an extent, because standing committees are closed door discussions, and MPs sometimes have a lot more honest discussions about bills in standing committees than the parliament, because there's no pressure of just towing the party line always. And the second thing is, next year is, well, a year before the election year, so it's going to be really exciting in that sense. So it's an atypical year in that sense. So sometimes it does happen that because you're doing policy work, and parties start thinking about their manifestos, and they start thinking about what will be relevant in the next elections. When I was when I was a LAM, my MP was from Bihar. I used to work in Mr. N.K. Singh. He was in JDU then, and Bihar had state elections. So I was to making some of the doing some research for the manifesto of JDU that year, and that was really exciting too. So I think next year would be also really eventful in terms of parliament, in terms of politics. So it's a really good year to be a LAMP fellow, I also think.
So I'll just add something. One other part of the LAMP experience for your MP, which may happen, is constituency visits. That happens from time to time for certain MPs. So one of my friends, she assisted her MPs in assessing how the various stakeholders of government schemes in their constituency were faring. So that was a very relevant work that they took on the ground, and they talked to various stakeholders. They talked to panchayat committees and people who are on the receiving end of various policies and schemes, and they tried to figure out loopholes, and they tried to take it up with authorities who are concerned. So there are a lot of impact that you can actually do with your work. And as Yash has already mentioned, you cannot possibly codify what work you do on a daily basis, or even for that matter throughout LAM. It happens regarding, it depends on the interests of your particular MP. It depends which issues they're willing to take. For sure, it's going to be interesting.
Yep. Maybe just building on that, and maybe Amrit, you can take this up in particular, Amrit and Shivam, I guess. But what happens? So this is when the parliament is in session, basically, right? Well, what about the intersession period, right? What does that look like? Because those are long chunks of time, right? What do you do?
So recently the intersession period got over. That's what PRS did for us was they organized a lot of workshops, and they were on different policy sectors. So we had workshops on tech policy, we had workshops on education policy, health policy, foreign policy. We had the chance to talk to a diplomat from the Israeli embassy. We had the chance to talk to a former health secretary about how her interventions helped create impact on the ground, and during COVID as well. Other than that, there are field trips happening. So we got the chance to shadow some observers in the annual State of Education Report Survey, the ASER survey that is undertaken by the Pratham NGO every year. Observers in 4 different states of the country: Rajasthan, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, areas around Delhi. So that was one. And another important field trip that almost happens every single year is a field trip to Baramati in Maharashtra, where the Honorable MP, Ms. Supriya Suresh, invites all the LAMs to undertake a tour of the Baramati Tehsil, see how policy implementation is being undertaken on the ground, visit various places such as, say, the KVK Trust, the dairy center, and you get to interact with people who are actually running the show. And the best thing about LAMP is that they actually seek your inputs in what they can do better on the ground, what they can do better in running the place. So this is what broadly happens during intersession.
Yep. One thing that I'll add, and that applies to everything we have said thus far, and please correct me if you disagree in the panel, but some 90% of your LAMP experience depends solely on the MP you're assigned to. Okay, like yes, PRS has design and experience, and totally right. There are guardrails and there's rules, regulations, whatever practices, and they work. But that's not is it that since you're assigned to an MP's office, right, day-to-day experience every single day, it depends on whoever you're working with, right? So please be mindful of that. And also, Amrit, not everyone gets that Baramati trip. We did not. So
I think it's fairly new. In our cohorts did not have it.
We got an MKSS trip. We went to Telonia, even in the first batch.
Whoa.
So
that's super good.
Yeah. We went for Aruna Roy's work in Rajasthan, and that was amazing. Sorry, I just want to add something to this. I think in the election period, by the way, a lot of times if you're with a Rajya Sabha MP, they don't go anywhere, and they're working pretty much all around the year. Lok Sabha MPs usually travel back to constituencies.
Yep.
And I know that sometimes, people have this hesitation because we read this in our civics book that Lok Sabha is where a lot of action happens. But in the last 10-12 years, Lok Sabha has so much majority that actually a lot of pushback against government policy comes from Rajya Sabha. So just one thing to keep in mind is that Rajya Sabha is a very important check and balance on the Lok Sabha in the parliamentary system. And actually a lot of very smart people are in Rajya Sabha because they're nominated. And
academics.
Don't worry too much about whether you're with a Lok Sabha MP or a Rajya Sabha MP, because Lok Sabha MPs can give you that whole orientation about constituency and what happens on the ground, and Rajya Sabha MPs tend to be more engaged with the parliament itself. So just
couldn't agree more, Aprajita. Absolutely. 2 quick things. One is a question, one is an input. So one is, a lot of people ask me that, hey, I don't want to work with an MP of this party. I'm sorry, you don't have a choice. Okay. MP assignment is at random. At least that's what we are told. And that's what I would like to believe. But point being that we don't have any control over the process, right? So that's one thing. Maybe just a mindset thing that I'll add, and please feel free to add in, which is, you're a professional, right? You're a policy professional who's there to do a job. You're being paid to do the job, and you're there to learn, right? I understand that everyone has their values, inclinations, and as you should, right? But as long as you're in an MP's office, he or she is an elected representative, right? So it's good to just get beyond that and be like, okay, what I have a job to do, I'll just do that, right? To the best that I can. That's one thing. Second thing, and maybe Prajita, you can answer this the best. We skipped on this slightly, which is the interview process, right? Are there, I mean, it's an open-ended question, but what does that look like, right? And what should people prepare for in general?
Yeah, I think in the interview process, people should know definitely what they've written about in the essay. Not just to the extent of what they have written, those 500 words, but even beyond that, have a good understanding of that policy that they've written about. Second is having high political/policy awareness, knowing, for example, who are the sitting legislators, who are the sitting sort of chief ministers, what are the party kind of dynamics. So if you are somebody who follows the news very well, I think you should be okay, and not just one news, but like many news sources.
Yeah.
And I think the third thing is also to be able to demonstrate a kind of a commitment to what you're signing up for, and having a good understanding of the fellowship. Like, if you come across as somebody who hasn't done their research in terms of what the fellowship entails, then that's a bad show as well. So I would these three things, but I'm sure Shivam, you've also been on the panel a couple of times, so he's going to add something.
Yeah, I think, as you rightly mentioned, knowing the subject around whatever you've written on in the essays is very important. The other thing I really think makes a difference in interviews is your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So if you can convey that you're really excited about the policy sphere, if you're really excited about understanding politics, if you're really excited about India in general, I guess, like that, if it comes across in your essays, in the policy analysis that you've done, if you're willing to delve deeper into issues because you want to understand the country, you want to like do something in the policy realm, it really shows and it really helps your cause. The second thing that I noticed, a lot of people think language is a major barrier when you go for the interview. It's actually important. You do require English. It's important because a lot of the application process is in English. The essays that you submit are in English. The interview that you give mostly goes in English, but you do not need to be like Shashi Tharoor level of English. If you have operational knowledge of the language, you're good to go. You can communicate in Hindi during the interviews, and that's a demographic that I actually think needs to be applying more, needs to be more like aware of the LAM Fellowship, because it is an audience that like MPs want to reach, and it is what that MPs really appreciate in their language, anyone with local language skills. So definitely to apply.
Absolutely. And maybe just one last thing I'll add on that is that please know your resume, your essays by heart, in the sense, know about everything you've done in them, right? Because they will pick up something from whatever you mentioned in the essay or resume or SOP, right? And be like, okay, how does this make sense? How does this fit in or whatever, right? So be very clear about that. Next thing, and maybe Shivam can pick this up in particular, since, you work with an MP who was like, let's just say, party onto himself, right? In that sense. But what does the day-to-day look like, Shivam, right? For a LAM fellow? And what are some of the set tasks that you perform? What does the whole thing look like in that sense? When the parliament
So as you very rightly mentioned, there is no typical day-to-day for all of the LAM fellows. Completely depends on your MP. So, and completely depends on the period of the year. If it is in session, then regardless of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, whatever state your MP is from, he is going to be in Delhi. And you are probably going to be expected to be in office all day during that period. You will be having a television set on where the House of Parliament is playing live. You're waiting for your MP to basically speak something that you've written, which is actually quite exciting. But the day-to-day usually entails you drafting a lot of stuff for the parliament session next day, drafting parliamentary questions which are submitted 15 days in advance. And the session is till like the end of the session. So you would be like writing a lot during that period. The other period when parliament is not in session, if your MP is from a faraway state, he might go back to his constituency, but he might assign you some research work for you to do yourself around different issues that he cares about, around different issues that are being raised in parliament or that were raised last session or something that he really wants raised. We actually did a lot of research around why bamboo should be a grass instead of a tree. And it might not seem meaningful, but for a region like the Northeast, this is a major transformation. Because trees, you require environmental clearance to cut. It's not easy to do commercial activity around bamboo. And it's now been classified into a grass, so anyone can cut it and use it for commercial purposes. And this was something that 4 or 5 batches of LAM fellow at my MP's office worked with. So it's also a tradition, because a lot of officers have these long-term projects running. I take some of the credit because it happened in my year, but I actually did not do much of the work for it. It was happening for 4 years before me. Different people wrote on it, different people filed motions on it, but you get this handed over to you from a previous batch that, okay, like this is what our pet project is. Uh, other than that, I would say day to day, really go to the PRS briefings, go to the PRS sessions. You probably will not have an opportunity like that to interact with Delhi's policy space, to interact with people like that. Other than that, your cohort is super important. Get to know people there, get to know how their experience has been, what they're planning to do after LAMP. I think the alumni network that you come out of after LAMP is probably stronger than most university networks in this country. And you really should get to know people.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I'm just going to add an open-ended input, and please feel free to chime in because I'm sure I'll miss something. See, the experience of LAMP is more than the office you're working in, the MP you're working for, the brilliant workshops that PRS organized, etc. The experience of LAMP is about being in New Delhi, in the heart of public policy, where this country is run in that sense, right? It's about meeting, I don't know, a lot of new people, interesting, individuals, academics, and, practitioners, right? MPs across party lines as well sometimes, right? At common events, a lot of MPs invite you to their home, right? Like the entire cohort for lunch or whatever, right? The experience is that, I don't know, some foreign minister is in Delhi to some sort of a talk, right? And you can attend an event and of course get free food at the Taj, but that's besides it, right? The experience is that, there's a book launch, right? And you can attend that, interact with the writer himself or herself, right? Like that 1 year, you will genuinely get a sense of exposure that is unparalleled. Right? And I don't say, it's not just because I have a bias for LAMP, it's just a fact of life that's the core value of this fellowship. Of course, you go to our office every day, you learn, right? You interact and all of it, but this is the core value, the exposure you get, the experience you get, and the people you get to meet, right? And yeah, in a lot of offices, actually, ex-LAMPs are there, right? In different roles. Maybe they're chief of staff, in some sort of a research role. And so that's even better because you get that sense of guidance, as exactly as Shivam was mentioning, right? That sense of continuity, right? Because this will be the final year of parliament in that sense, right? So that's also that. Anything I have missed in that sense? Yeah. Any point about the fellowship? I'm just closing the.
I just want to add something. I think, you said that 90% of your experience depends on what MP you get allocated to, which is true to a large extent because, MPs ultimately they are politically elected representatives and a lot happens in a year. For example, there might be state elections, the party itself is changing, people change parties. So by the way, for everybody who thinks that, oh, I'm not sure if I want to join with this party MP in today's political this thing, by the end of the year, MP may be in some other party. So don't get too attached to your MP's parties because they don't seem to be that attached to their own party right now. But I also want to say that, it depends a lot on you, on what kind of learning you take away from the program, as it happens in any other program. But I think more so with LAMP, the faster you are able to build some kind of trust with your MP, the more you are able to push them. And sometimes they are also really looking for ideas. So I know a lot of LAMPs who wanted to do something which was their own passion project. And then, they went to their MPs and they were like, oh, let's put a private member bill on this. And MP was like, okay, let's do it, beta. And then, it just goes into the parliament. So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to kind of, create that kind of impact while you are learning and absorbing in that sense. And what Yash and Shivam also mentioned about the alumni group, etc., that is very, very true. I am somebody who was in the first batch. So, of course, I didn't have people before me. But I would say that, and I went to Oxford to study for MPP later. But I do think that I actually use my LAMP network, alumni network a lot more than my degree. In that, I mean, the network that I have from Oxford, that's useful. But in the Indian context, LAMP network is a lot more plugged into the policy space. There are people everywhere. And I can see 10 years down the line. I mean, I have LAMPs who work in our team. I have LAMPs who are my clients. I have LAMPs who are, just good friends. So they are everywhere in my life now. So I hope that, that continues, that kind of feeling of fraternity in the LAMP.
I'll just add something. So adding on to what has already been said, I remember the first time I met Yash, and so we were just new to the fellowship, and we met Yash, and we were asking about what are the prospects after LAMP. Is LAMP a good thing? And he answered with, "We are everywhere." and 5 months into the fellowship, I think that sums up everything about LAMP. LAMPs are literally everywhere in the policy scene. I haven't gone to a place, a conference where any major organization does not have a LAMP. And another part of LAMP that has been a very beneficial experience for me is the peer-to-peer learning that you get on a daily basis. Because people here are from various disciplines. People here are from law, people are from policy, sociology, economics, even from engineering. So when you interact with people who come from different places, not only academically, but also culturally, you get to learn a lot about the states, about the people there, and about how they function. So that, I think, the sense of camaraderie that LAMP as a whole it has in terms of the alum network or in terms of the peer-to-peer interaction, that is extremely beneficial for you as you go forward.
Unparalleled, absolutely. Now, maybe the final part of our conversation for today, right? So, career opportunities after LAMP to begin with, and maybe there's something more with Shivam, Prachi, that you could take up. So the fellowship ends in around March budget session, right? And I'll add one thing, because this is a conversation now I'm having, I'm sure both of you as well, right, with LAMPs of the current cohort of how to get on with it. And see, around the end of the financial year and the start of the new financial year, a lot of new opportunities come up. That's where the funding grants come in and all of that, right? So be patient, right? February, March, April rolls in and you'll start having more opportunities, jobs come up in that sense. A lot of people have already started applying, in fact, and Amrit, correct me if I'm wrong, right? So that's also happening. But broadly speaking, maybe Shivam, Prajit, both of you, right, together could sum up what are some of the, and I'll also add in, what are some of the channels or lines of work that people usually go into after LAMP, and what opportunities exist?
Shivam, you want to go?
I think you should start, considering you've seen more cohorts.
Okay, great. So I think after LAMP, so most LAMPs, tend to be people who have either no work experience before LAMP, or they have about 1 to 2 years of work ex before LAMP. So it really depends on how many years of work ex you've had before LAMP. But just in case you are somebody who is an early professional, I think there are many things that you can do. And hopefully during LAMP, because you'll be working on very different policy subjects, you'll also get a sense of what is your interest. So, for example, I actually did another fellowship after LAMP because I felt that, I've done 1 year of LAMP. I want to get some other kind of experience. So I did a fellowship that made me get some international experience and also some grassroots experience. So I actually worked with Tony Blair Faith Fellowship. I also know of other people who go on to do IIC fellowship, which is with the U Chicago Center. There are people who actually start working with governments. So now there are so many opportunities to work with governments and young professionals. So, LAMP gives you an idea of a legislature, and then you can also get a chance to work with the executive. And even for these government kind of roles, like, Niti Aayog, many central government ministries, many state governments like Delhi government, Maharashtra government, all of them have their own roles, consultants, fellowships, etc. And they do have a high preference for LAMP. So you can apply for those as well. Second, you can apply to consulting firms in the policy space that are doing different things. They work with a lot of different kind of organizations, help them develop better policies, assess what kind of impact policies have on their businesses, and also help them devise advocacy strategies. The third thing is you can get into civil society itself, which is, there are organizations like Save Life Foundation, like a bunch of foundations, Population Foundation of India, foundations in health, gender, many different things. I don't think I can cover the entire expanse, but you can work in core civil society organizations as well, because many of them do want to engage with the policy making process, and where your this thing would be really useful. Some LAMPs have actually gone back to journalism, so or gone into journalism, not back to journalism, because I think the kind of orientation you have in terms of now tracking and analyzing policy, that is very helpful in journalism as well. And am I forgetting something, Shivam? Why don't you? I think there's so many things that people can do.
No, that's actually brilliantly covered. A lot of LAMP fellows stay in the policy domain, and that policy domain ends up being either working at a government in one of the fellowships or working directly with someone who's become, say, a minister or is in the standing committee, and you continue to work with their offices. A lot of people continue to work with their MPs or a different MP who's hiring from the LAMP batch itself. Then there are a lot of think tanks. There are a lot of people who go into journalism. The second part would actually be going the corporate policy route, which is now you have companies like Facebook, Amazon. Yash can definitely talk about that route at Twitter. So almost all of these companies have public policy teams now. Lamb Fellows have pretty much been to like all of these companies' public policy teams. The third one that I'm seeing, consultancy, as Aprajita mentioned, yes, definitely a big one. But even other corporate houses and core business roles, it is now happening because your ability to just do research, your ability to like even just know how much data you can pull out of the Parliament website is something that a lot of people don't have experience with. So you do stand out when you interview for almost any kind of corporate role.
Yeah.
Fourth, I think a major chunk of people go out to foreign universities uh, to do their masters, to like pursue higher education in different forms. People have gone on to do PhDs. Uh, that is definitely like something LAMP helps with, because you can get a recommendation letter from a member of parliament if you've done well and built a relationship with them. Another one that I've seen, at least a few people have qualified for the UPSC after LAMP. So that also happens. Uh, Sixth, I guess a lot of entrepreneurship coming out of LAMP, which is might not happen immediately after LAMP, but now more and more. I'm doing something that I built myself. Prajita has built organizations herself. Yash is building an organization himself. So almost all the LAMP fellows are like builders at the end of it. You have experience of the private sector, then you have the experience of the government. You've seen the parliament. You've seen so much that you're better placed to create something.
Yeah, yeah. And if I can just add to that, Shivam, Prajita, and Amrit, just building on our previous this thing. If you are building something in the policy space in India, you have an army of people backing you because LAMP. Quite honestly, right? Like when I started thinking about it, I just showed up at Aprajita's office. I was like, you know what? Listen, let's talk, right? It's just that people are genuinely invested in your success, right? It's not a zero-sum game. They genuinely want to help you succeed, and they're happy to share contacts, networks, whatever it takes. So that's one thing. And I'm glad, Shivam, you didn't mention writing a book, because that's something only exceptional people can do. So.
Absolutely. I was going to say that. You missed that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good career option. It's definitely something to do, but yeah.
But there's that. Great.
Sorry, Yash, I actually just want to add something. I know Shivam mentioned that you can work with companies, etc. Typically, though, because I also I was obviously the first batch lamb probably who started working for a company, because I was in the first batch. I was in Snapdeal before we started TQH. I think just one heads up that I want to give. I think Twitter obviously had this requirement of having a very young person to do the work that they got you on board for, but it's atypical usually.
Yep.
So typically, all the roles that I've seen in companies, they require about 4 to 5 years of work ex.
That too
So
relevant work ex.
come out of LAMP and you suddenly go into like one of these big tech firms. I just wanted to do some expectation in that sense.
Yeah.
So, and the other just advice is that yes, higher education is great, but also don't be in a hurry to go and do your higher education just after LAMP. LAMP gives you a great network of people. You can use that to learn a lot more. So if you go for higher education, then you'll extract yourself from that network and then go for some time. So something that you should consider. And it's really like in policy school, especially if you're planning to go abroad. In India, of course, we have the entrance exam. And by the way, there are many good policy schools in India also now. I think when I went, there was no other option as such. But I think the thing is that you actually public policy schools, like the good ones, if you're especially going abroad, they require you to have a lot more work experience, not just 1 year of work experience. Typically. So you will be able to get better scholarships, etc. if you work a little bit more, like at least for 3-4 years, and then apply. Just random, nobody asked for it, but
in fact, if you
I feel responsible.
No, Rajita, if you have just survived on 20,000 a month ka stipend, then don't go to policy school. Earn. Just work for some time. That and couldn't agree more. Like there are a lot of consultancies. In fact, something that Aprajit also does, right? A lot of the biggest companies in the world, they work with them, right? For policy support, approach, and all of it. Your big tech and FANGs and what have you. Although their names keep changing, so the acronym does as well. But the point being that they outsource a lot of their, a certain portion of the policy work to such consulting partners, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that at these big companies, and having worked at one myself, you are hired in a decision-making role some 99% of the times, right? They only hire managerials and, senior manager for senior managerial roles in that sense. So expectation setting, absolutely. But otherwise, it's an open field in that sense. Cool. I think I don't have any specific questions, so to speak, anymore that that we have gathered from audience. So what we'll do is just run through the entire panel for. It's an open question, but any tips, tricks, advice, insights, inputs you want to give for as a parting word for our audiences who have tuned in and are looking to apply to the fellowship this year? We'll start with Amrit.
Sure. Thank you. So almost everything has been covered, but I just want to stress this because I've been asked this question a lot of times. A lot of my friends had this apprehension that you're working in a highly political space, and we have this conception of MPs as like something other. So I just want to stress this here that most MPs, in fact, all of them are really hardworking people.
Yeah.
On a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
You need to respect the work that they do. They're representing a huge chunk of people. They're representing the grievances. They're making policies for them. They know what they're doing. Since they do not have as much time on their hands to go into every aspect of it in the parliamentary form, so you are here to provide them with research support. And your nature of work may vary depending on your MP. So it's very important, as I have been told time to time by ex-LAMPs, that you need to create your own work. You need to interact with people, with the alum network, with the cohort, to understand how better you can contribute. So it may happen that you may not have a lot of work within the cohort, within your office in general, but there are a lot of other ways in which you can contribute. You can go to policy conferences, you can talk to people. And just to end with the application process part, I think it has already been covered, but please focus on an essay that you actually believe in, both for the policy essay and even when you are writing the SOP. Don't bring words out of thin air. People who are evaluating it are far more experienced than you are, and they know plagiarism, they know lie when they see one. So that's about it. All the best.
Shubham?
Yeah. So I'll just end with two application tips. Essentially, there are two things you need to demonstrate. One is your passion for the space and LAMP itself. The second thing you need to demonstrate is your ability to think. And that is what it ultimately comes down to. And when you're writing your essays, especially say the policy essay, what you need to demonstrate is that you've actually thought through all sides of why you're talking about this policy. Summarize what the policy is, because you need to show that you understand it. Then you need to be able to evaluate some of the pros, some of the cons, essentially break down your thought process on how you would go about thinking on any policy or any bill or anything that the government does. You have to have the capability to break it down into simple words. Great English is not what's being looked for. What's being looked for is ability to break down things in an understandable manner. And passion, ultimately, multiple ways to demonstrate it. Your excitement in the essay comes across, your excitement in the interviews comes across, but also that you've thought about what LAMP is, you understand why you want to do it, your reasons align with your goals in life. Even if you don't have very clear goals in life, if you just have a vague idea of what you want to do further ahead, does LAMP even align, or are you using it just as a way to spend the next 1 year because you have nothing other in hand? So that passion does come across. Do think about why you're.
Aprazita.
Great. I think we've spoken a lot about why LAMP is so great, etc. I just want to say that, ultimately, there's only 50 to 60 people who get to do the LAMP fellowship every year. So in case, you don't get into LAMP, don't lose heart. That's not the reason why you should not enter the policy space if you really want to. There are so many opportunities now which have opened up after, I think, and that happened because, PRS opened this space for young people, and now a lot of other opportunities exist. A lot of state governments, a lot of central governments, as we spoke about, have their own fellowships and opportunities for young professionals. So do explore those. They are also great way to get experience. In LAMP fellowship, you get experience of the legislature, but a lot of policy making actually happens in the executive, which is the government. Yeah. So those opportunities also exist. So I just wanted to close also with that although we've spoken about how great LAMP is, it is not the only thing. And you should not let go of your passion for policy just because you don't get one opportunity, because India is a huge country and we only have, as many people which can avail of that opportunity. Having said that, good luck.
This is very helpful. I'll just end with the closing notes, and I'll sound like a 40-year-old when I say this, but having spoken to some 1,500, 2,000 people in the last 3 years of, just mentoring them in terms of careers and all. One thing for sure, at the end of the day, a marker of success for anyone who wants to do anything here is, do you have fire in the belly, in the sense that are you hungry to do something, right? In that sense, because anything you want to learn is out there for free. Only the desire to learn is scarce, not the means for doing so, right? So just as Amrit was saying, and as Shivam was also adding, come with that sense of passion. I want to work here, right? And this is what interests me. This is what drives me. It can be anything: environment, gender, healthcare, nuclear energy, anything in that sense, right? But that's important, right? Your sense of purpose is very important as you step into this field in general, not just LAMP, right? And another thing, another thing that I keep telling people is, it's good to know 10% about 100% of the things out there, instead of knowing 100% about 10% of the things out there, right? At least early on in your career, breadth over depth early on, right? Eventually you have to become an expert in something, because then you get paid to make choices, right? So you need the nuances, right? So then you need the depth, but early on, breadth always helps, right? So I think, yeah, there's that. We'll conclude, and in the show notes, right, of the YouTube video itself, we'll link everyone's LinkedIn and a brief bio and everything. Please reach out. Prajita, Shivam, already they're absolute veterans. I'm repeating the very humble when they give their intro. So and they do make a lot of time to help people meet and catch up. So do feel free to reach out, and of course to me as well, and to Amit as well, right? We're always around, happy to help. And good luck. Please take care, and you got this.
Great. Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Bye.